Well, hello everyone, welcome back. I did say that I would go do this, so, well, here I am. We're gonna go do it. This is my opinion of basically every region, more or less, in Pokemon. I will not be covering Mystery Dungeon, I will not be covering Conquest, and I won't be covering a few of the others, but I'll be basically covering all of the main games, so Kanto to Alola. I will be doing Ore from Colosseum and XD. I will be doing the 3 regions from the Ranger games, since these are more or less the more classic idea of regions. Now, I'm not going to rank them in any specific order. I'm going to say what I like about them, what I don't like about them, etc., etc., etc. The first thing we should probably start with is Kanto. It's the first region ever developed, and it's obviously based off of the Kanto region. No duh. When it's kind of like shown, it's I don't like it too much. I really think it's just a giant mess of rectangles. That's usually how I see it, just a giant mess of rectangles. A lot of routes simply go in square, in 90-degree angles. They're not brutally interesting. It's very up, down, left, right. That's usually how I feel about Kanto. And it looks like that the version from like the Let's Go Eevee and stuff like that will not be really any different. It's going to be up, down, left, right. Maybe some of the areas have been altered a bit to make it a little less like that, but it looks like they're going to be keeping it like that, which personally for me really makes Kanto just seem the most lackluster. There's nothing really emphasized about it. It's just Kanto. There, it exists. That's kind of how I feel about it. It's interesting. Since more or less bits of it are like almost like the actual Kanto region, but others aren't, so it's kind of interesting. Every single time Kanto has been shown, it's either been shown as something really interesting or just bland as all hell. And currently, I'm still going to probably agree that it's bland as all hell. It, I believe, has some of the lowest population count, as they call it. I bet you how many people are living inside the cities, more or less, in the games. Probably the most interesting city out of all of it is probably Celadon, simply because there's just more to do in it than anywhere else. That's personal preference. Now, it really depends. A lot of the game basically varies most of the time. I really don't know what to say about Kanto. That's why I'm umming and ahhing. Obviously, it's kind of just straightforward. It's filled with areas to go. You got things to do. Pretty basic. The only one that I'll actually blatantly say is that the anime artwork for the Kanto region is gorgeous. It's rather nice, it's pretty, and I can most definitely get behind it. Now, the badges, I've made fun of them too many times, and I would totally love to go mess with, basically go over the silly names, but I'm sure that's going to be in the Soul Link at some point. I'm going to go silly with the names of the badges. Now, more or less everyone else, nothing too big. There's a whole bunch of trivia that about it that I'm sure everyone knows more or less at this point. It's not really that big of a deal. Now, what's a bigger deal is what's connected to it, Johto. Johto, personally, is, once again, it's still squarey, but it's a lot less squarey. With Kanto, it feels like you have to go back and forth, going in squares, just keep going in squares. With Johto, it feels like you're actually going places. It's not just a straight line or up and down. It feels like you're just going in places, and it's nice, it's different, and stuff like that. I have a fun thing about Johto. Instead of doing the 5th, then the 6th gem, I would go to the 7th, and then do the 5th and 6th. It's stupid, but I just randomly do it because it's not incredibly hard, and all you need to do is beat the Lake of Rage to go access it, and the Team Rocket hideout. So very straightforward, very simple, very basic, nothing too big. Most of it I actually rather enjoy. There's a lot of places to go. The only real place I have a problem with within all of Johto would probably be Cyanwood, because I feel like it's just kind of just plunk there for no real reason other than we have to have an island. But other than that, it's fairly nice. It's straightforward. It's a good region for anyone to get started with, and you don't have like a big, massive like problem and all this. Kanto, once again, has the problem of like going back and forth and being squares and other things like this. With other things, Johto has some of the best artwork out of the entire franchise. It is gorgeous. There's one promotional artwork that you'll see for a lot of backgrounds for people. It is gorgeous. It is, I believe it was used for Gen 4, but it might be for the TCG, but I believe it was used for just simply the Gen 4 games as like promotional material. And it's just simply a nice panoramic view of Johto, and it's gorgeous. And you can see Mount Silver in the back, who I'm not sure who did it, but it's amazing. Johto actually has probably one of the most areas in the anime. I'm going to poke a nice reference to it. Johto, however, as I said, I have the weirdest thing when it comes to Johto's gyms, because I do Faulkner, then Bugsy, then Whitney, then Morty, then I do Price, then Chuck, then Jasmine. So I do it completely out of order. Simply because you can get access to Price first. That's really all I do, because Morty gives you the ability to surf. So you can get away with it. Chuck, all Chuck does, I believe, is give you Fly. I don't think Jasmine gives you anything. And then Claire obviously gives you the ability to use Waterfall. Oh, no, you can't use Waterfall. Rock Climb? No, it's Waterfall. And then if you beat the 8 gyms in Kanto, you get Rock Climb. There we go. More or less, pretty straightforward. Nothing too big. Personally, it's probably the most even region. That's what I'll call it, the most even. There's not too much bad, there's not too much good, but it's a nice even amount of each. You don't have to really worry about it. Everything's solid. Now we're going to begin the more pushy territory with Hoenn. There's a lot of people that like Hoenn, and a lot of people who hate it. I'm kind of not neither. I personally don't mind Hoenn too much. And I don't find that it has a huge amount of water, even though, yes, there's a huge amount of water, but there's not an amount that really is distracting for me. I can easily go through the game, and there's no blatant problem with me just surfing. But that's me personally. I'm very silly. Like that. Out of all of them, probably, I really don't know, but Hoenn just looks pretty. It's probably my favorite thing about it. It just looks pretty. It's like it's southern-ish Japan, and so it's very tropical. It has a volcano. It has plenty of trees. It's just pretty. That's all I can call it. It's very basic of a region. It's very similar to Johto, actually, with the amount of people that it has. Stuff like this. It just feels pretty. That's it. That's literally all I could say about it, because it feels pretty. Now, the game, like everything else, is silly. Probably my favorite silly thing is Evergrande City. It's named as a city, but it has no one in it. No one. The whole population is a Pokemon Center. And for me, it's just kind of funny. There's plenty of places. There's a lot of artwork for the ORAS remakes that are gorgeous. but that's just artwork. That's not really the region. Now I should probably get this out of the way. I started playing Pokemon with Johto, kind of. It's weird, but more or less Johto. So I have a small bias towards Johto, but Hoenn I actually still have the physical cartridges for. I actually still have the cartridge for Kanto as well, but I have the physical cartridge for Emerald. So I have a small bias towards Hoenn in a way. But if I take the nostalgia glasses off, I can blatantly tell you that Hoenn is probably the most uneven region, because it has a lot of good, but then a lot of bad, but nothing really in between. So it's very uneven, rather than Johto kind of having a little bit of both and then a lot of in between, so it's like nice and balanced. It's just simple and straightforward. That's what we'll call it. However, the one thing I do like is the variety of gyms. Especially in Oras. Oras actually fixed a few of the only problems I had with the gyms, because they were sometimes really stupid. Well, they didn't fix Tate and Lisa. But they did actually fix a lot of the other things. For example, like Roxanne through Winona. Winona. Yeah, Winona. Different person. Winona. I all feel like they're actually gym leaders. Roxanne and Brawly don't break too much of a problem. Watson is a little harder because he has some steel types up his sleeve, and you probably don't have something that can deal with it. You might, but you probably don't. Flannery, if you started with a fire type or a grass type, you better bloody bring a water type or you're screwed. Basically, because she will sweep. Norman is interesting because he was the first normal gym leader. We got another one in Unova. But normal is an interesting type because it's only weak to fighting. And he has 2 slacking. Slacking hit hard. He can sweep your team if you're not careful. So, and Winona, even though she's not brutally difficult, feels like a gym leader. Blatantly feel like. The only gym leader out of all of these who I do not enjoy, I should have talked about the gym leaders for the other ones, but Kanto and Johto kind of have like a mixed bag. And I don't want to talk about Johto as gym leaders, that I've already said. Tate and Lisa, I wish they used their Emerald Party for Oras. I really wish they did, because their Emerald Party is nasty. It's not the worst in the world, but it's better than a Soul Rock and Lunatone. That Xatu can really set up for that Soul Rock, and so can the Claydol as well. It can set up for the Lunatone, so you really don't want to mess up. Now, I can understand kind of where they were coming from, but they didn't want to give them, like, they wanted to be as authentic as possible, because Oras is very authentic to Ruby and Sapphire. So if you want to do Ruby and Sapphire, it's one of the best ones you can do. So in Oras, they just have a higher leveled version, basically, of their team. However, their team got a slight upgrade, I think, move-wise. But other than that, didn't really get anything. So I kind of feel bad for them. To be fair, their gym was cool, so they get a free pass, I guess. And then Wallace and Juan. Juan is usually fairly easy, and then Wallace can be a pain. Pretty straightforward. They're not too bad. It's also one of the first few gyms that actually swaps between versions, and it's actually rather nice. The Elite Four. Oh boy. I should have talked about the Elite Four for Johto and Kanto. In Kanto, it's very, very biased. Actually, you know what? I'll go over them. Sure, why not? I know I'm backtracking, but I will go over them. In Gen 1, it is deliberately biased. It is legitimately some of the most annoying types imaginable. But then in Gen 2, you can sweep 3 of them with a Psychic type. That's it. You just need Psychic type. They'll all die. I've done it. In Heart Gold, I had an Espeon, and I swept Will, Koga, and Bruno. And you could do it with Karen, too, because Karen doesn't have too many Dark types, even though she's a Dark type Elite Four. So there's a few problems with the Elite Four on this. Hoenn, I will blatantly tell you, is probably the beginning of when they become a little less biased. I actually kind of find it interesting that in order, Sydney and Phoebe, Sydney's good against Phoebe, but he's lower like on the tier list. And it's actually kind of funny. It's in Glacia and Drake. Like, Drake's a dragon, I believe, but Glacia's below him. So it's kind of amusing. And then, but it kind of swaps itself on the head when Steven and Wallace are in there. Because Wallace is the champion in Emerald, and then Steven for Ruby, Sapphire, and Oras. So it doesn't really make too much sense, but then you think about it, and then starts to make more. Because if Emerald happened like it thought it was, Wallace didn't really beat Steven. Steven let himself lose because he wanted to do other things. So it would kind of make sense. So if Wallace is a tier below Steven, it's kind of amusing how it kind of ends up like this. That and most of them are actually, at least, they're not developed, but they have enough character to them where they're interesting. It's also the first time that Elite Four members actually had their own theme. In Johto, the Elite Four used the Johto and Kanto. They used the gym leader theme. That, and they also have an encounter theme, which is actually really nice, and I love it. Probably my favorite one right there. Now, I would go over the Battle Frontier, but I really haven't ever really used it, so I don't care. Like, I really don't care. I blatantly don't care. The only one I've really tried to do was the Battle Pike. And that was just because I knew what the hell I was doing and I was bored. Now, everything else is pretty basic and straightforward. So, enough to talk about Hoenn. Let's talk about my favorite and least favorite region at the same time, Sinnoh. I love Sinnoh because it is just so varied. There's so many different types of places you can go. However, Mount Coronet. Why do you exist? Well, actually, I don't mind you existing, but why are you so much? Mount Coronet, you pass through like 5 times through the actual game. And it's annoying. And you have to go through it every time you want to go to Spear Pillar. Which means you need to go there at least twice more just to get to Algan Palkia. And Platinum. Yup. I love Sinnoh, but I also blatantly hate it. Ooh, neat. Feature card. Sinnoh, personally, is probably the most diverse region from its base appearance. Base appearance. Straight up. It looks sillily gorgeous. Routes are going all over the place. Cities are placed in weird places, but good places at the same time. There's different islands that randomly are around. There's an extra game area that you can go to. It has its own stuff to it. It's really weird, but I love it. Probably I've been kind of going over this. My favorite city and my least favorite one. My favorite one is probably Hearthome. That's personal preference. And then my least favorite is probably Floroma, just simply because I don't really know why it exists. It just kind of feels like we gotta put it there. We gotta put a town there for you. It just feels too clustered, and I would have much preferred to just ditch Floroma Town altogether. Just get rid of it. There's no reason for it to exist. But that's personal preference. Now, what is neat is the underground. I will actually plain tell you that the underground is really cool. But man, was it annoying sometimes. Because I didn't know too many people when I started playing it that actually had the game, so I couldn't really use the underground, well, to its full potential. I actually really like it because it's a good mesh of the idea of like Union Room and stuff like this, where you're connected to each other, but with the secret bases from Emerald and Ruby and Sapphire. So it just kind of feels nice. It's a personal thing that's a nice touch that I think worked very well. Now, no one could find my secret base because I was always an asshole and just put in a really hard place to get to. That's like way out of your way, and you'd like never think about trying to go there. Just because. That. The other thing is this is probably for the most people, but this is, but in the anime, this was the last season where they did the more classic style of drawing. They ditched it in Unova. They started using a lot more. Like, obviously, they changed it again in X&Y, and then now they have a very different art style for Sun and Moon. It's still nice, but it's a different art style. So that's just something I should go over just very quickly for people who are feeling nostalgic. Nevertheless, the elite, though, not the elite, the gym leaders are different, to say the least. I'm getting kind of tired of rock-type gym leaders. I'm glad they decided to ditch rock-type gym leaders. But, well, they ditched gym leaders altogether. But they ditched rock-type gym leaders after this, which was... It felt nice for me, because I was getting tired of them being the first gym leader. Because you got Brock, and then Roxanne, and now we have Rourke. Though Rourke actually has more of a connection, because Byron, the 6th gym leader, is his father, and he does steel types. Okay, fine. I have a personal, like, not really connection, but, like, feeling for Gardenia. I like her attitude, I guess. All the gym leaders in Sinnoh feel like they have their own unique personality. In Hoenn, they kind of did. In Joda, they feel like carbon copies of each other, except for technically Whitney, because they give Whitney at least a little bit of character development, even though she didn't need it. And then in Kanto, they're literally, once again, they're stick figures. In here, even their short dialogue with you is interesting. Yeah, sure, you see Fantina, like, twice. That's it. Is she funny? Yes. Yes, she is, because I understand what she's saying. Candice is the least seen gym leader out of all of them. You talk to her once. Once in the main game. That's it. Rourke, you can actually go, like, actively talk. Yeah, you have to go talk to him and find him. Candice, she's interesting at least a little bit, because it seems like she's the only one that has, like, all of her, like, piece and puzzles together. Like, Rourke is just getting started. Gardenia is trying to figure out a few things. Maylene is, once again, just similar to Rourke. She's just starting. Crusher Wake, he's insane. Fantino moved from a region. I'm going to probably say they're going to probably make canon that it's, or at least kind of hinted at, that it's Kalos. Kind of makes sense. In the English version, she uses French, so makes sense. I think in some of the other versions, she uses different program languages, but it kind of makes sense for the English release. Maybe they'll pick a different place for more thing, like a more international release. Byron, once again, by the time you fight him, you already know that he's the father of Rourke. Rourke already made a statement about his father at one point. Now, it was very brief, and if you actually clicked over the dialogue, you wouldn't have seen it. So, you have at least some understanding of who Byron is. Candace, you kind of, like, don't, once again, like, Byron also talks to you out of the gym. Volkner, you have to go talk to him so that you actually can go fight him, similar to Rourke. but not quite as annoying because you don't have to go into an area with wild Pokemon all over the place. So it's just kind of interesting how every gym leader other than Candace basically doesn't have their shit together and needs you to go get them. So it's kind of amusing. Now the Elite Four and the champion are varied. They are very varied. Aaron is Bug. You don't underestimate him. He can obliterate you sometimes. Bertha is Ground, which isn't really that bad. But Flint and Lucian are probably two of the hardest Elite Four members ever. Just simply because, well, in Diamond and Pearl, Flint is just a pain because he doesn't have any fire types. But because they have a good variety of moves that are basically prepared for whatever the hell you do. And I'm pretty sure Flint's Magmortar knows Thunderbolt. So you really need to be careful. Cynthia, on the other hand, I'm sure we all know the pain and suffering of her Spiritomb, which has no weaknesses at this point. She eventually gets a Togekiss in Platinum that has Serene Grace. That's flinch happy. Because it has Air Slash. Trust me, I know. I have a Togekiss in... I don't think Platinum... Actually, yeah, no, in Platinum. I have a Togekiss myself. And, yeah, no, it's very nice. To just be able to flinch everything. Flinch that guy? Flinch them. Flinch that guy? Flinch them too. Everyone flinches. In everything else, it was just kind of interesting. Now, there's a whole bunch of stuff for Sinnoh. I'd much rather not keep talking about Sinnoh because it's just kind of basic and straightforward. It feels nice, and I should just stop gawking it because it does have a lot of problems, such as Mount Coronet, Diamond and Pearl's terrible pacing, and there's some other problems too with Platinum, but nowhere near as many as Diamond and Pearl. So, interesting things. Now we're going to move to the United States with Unova. Unova. Literally, my first comment is it's a circle. It's a fucking circle. Even in Black 2 and White 2, it's a fucking circle. I won't ever change my statement about it. That is my personal opinion of it, and it will always be a fucking circle. Simply because I don't like the region's design. Love the places, hate the fucking design. Because in White, which I recently played again, I've felt like I was just constantly going in a loop. Like, legitimately, it just felt like I was going in a loop. It didn't feel like I was moving forward. It just felt like I was going in a circle. Black 2, White 2, it doesn't feel quite as much because you're going back and forth to places. You're crossing the map, and you're going up and down, left, right. In Black and White, it just felt like I was going in a circle. Now, it could be because I was over-leveled. I don't really actually know how I got over-leveled, but I was over-leveled. So it could be just because I'm killing everything in time, so I'm not, like, having fun or creating strategies or other things like this. But it just felt like I was going in circles. It just wasn't fun. To a complete extent, anyway. Maybe it's because it was kind of silly, and it was when they were trying to like start pushing a story, and the story was not that good. The actual like ideas of it isn't too bad, but the story itself is crap. The idea of the battle subway was pretty nice. Now I'll go over the gym leaders because I did it before. The idea for you to fight a gym leader who is stronger than you as your first one was genius. It was legit. I was legitimately surprised when I first fought them, and I went, "Oh shit," because I actually lost because I didn't grab the Simipour. Eventually, my first playthrough, I eventually kept that Simipour and Penpour, excuse me, and they eventually became Simipour. And I actually used my water type through the entire game. It was a fast water type. And that's about it. So it was interesting. Now, Lenora, probably not my favorite normal type gym leader, but not the worst. The worst is also from Unova because he's the only other one. Lenora can either be as bad as Norman in battle or as good as Norman outside of battle. It's weird. I don't like comparing her to too much because she just feels like her own entity and really shouldn't be put into like a category for a gym leader simply because she has variety and can sometimes be real pain. That, and you actually learn a bit about her and stuff like that. So it was a fun thing to know who she was, and that's about it. Berg. He's a bug. He's legitimately an artist. How do we know? His Japanese name is Artie. He's an artist. He has bugs. Not too big of a deal. He's not usually that challenging in any real way, but he's always very amusing to see because he's silly sometimes. Elisa, I'm not really sure how to say that. Emolgas, plain and simple. They shouldn't have given her two of them. Clay, feels like he should be a proper ground type gym leader. Same thing with Skyla, and Bryson, and Drayden and Iris. Like all four of them are the final four. All four of them feel like they should be gym leaders, just straight up. Like Lenora does too. So everyone else, like, they're just a nuisance. Like, they don't feel like too much a challenge, or they're way too much of a challenge for no good reason. Now, in Black 2, White 2, they kind of fixed this, where now I'm playing through White 2 on challenge mode because I'm going to murder myself. Sharon and Roxy. Sharon is my least favorite normal type gym leader, simply because I think he should have been a varied gym leader. To get you started, we don't start with normal, we start you with random. We start you with someone who has not just normal, but to like a different type. Similar to like Chili and stuff like that. But in this case, he would use another mod. I was going to say fighting, so a good idea would be Riolu or something. Something to just shake it up. So I don't think he should have been normal. Just, that's a personal opinion, because it's like, you shouldn't really be normal. Because, once again, as Sharon states, he would have probably been different if he used his actual party. And if his actual party still exists from Black and White, yeah, he's going to wreck shit. So I really think that Sharon, as a first gym leader, isn't bad. As a normal gym leader, much that could have been improved. Roxy. Interesting. I'll leave it at that. Berg. He's still Berg. Alyssa, at least she now has a Flaffy, which actually is kind of nice, and her party's kind of varied now. Though I think in challenge mode she gets another Emolga again, which would be annoying. No, she gets the Joltik. Okay. Oh, her Emolga has a bloody citrus berry. Great. It's not annoying enough. You gotta make it more annoying. You can restore its own hit points. Clay. He's about the same as he was in the first game. Skyla, same thing. Drayden, I prefer Drayden in Black 2 and White 2 because he feels more like a gym leader. Drayden in Black and White felt like a mayor, and Iris felt more like the gym leader from White. Just personal thing. Marlon, I don't really know what to say. I really think he shouldn't have probably been in the game. They probably should have just kept Ryzen in as gym leader. Just probably would have been better. Marlon just feels like he was tacked on for no real reason. Now, the Elite Four has a very similar problem to Johto. It's Ghost fighting Dark and Psychic. One problem. Dark types can deal with 2 of them. A Bug type or a Fighting type can deal with Grimsley. No problem. Especially a Fighting type. Marshall, any Flying or Psychic type can just wreck him. They all have such a team where they have so many common weaknesses that it's just, I can't do this anymore. Now, I will tell you that Alder is probably the weakest champion, even though he's one of the ones that has a varied party. He's just too straightforward. He doesn't fight hard enough. While Iris actually feels like a pain, one, because she has some of the most powerful dragons imaginable, so she'd give a Lance a run for his money. And second, she actually has type coverage. 3 of her Pokemon, I believe, aren't dragon type, and are actually there to keep her weaknesses in check. So, she's actually bloody terrifying. Now, she's not quite as terrifying as someone like Cynthia, who's also in this game, perks to Unova, but it's interesting. Now, other than now that I'm done ranting about Unova, I should probably state my opinions about Unova constantly change. Black and White and Black 2, White 2 are specifically Black 2 and White 2, are probably the set of games I restart the most. There's always something in Unova I just haven't found. I want to go find it again. But I can never really sit down and play it, because it always feels like it gets about in the mid area. It feels like it's starting to drag. Because, especially since this was when they started to put a story. And the story really, in Black and White, isn't too good. And yeah, sure, it's me personally, I find it silly, so that's why I usually keep going. In Black 2 and White 2, the story isn't as prominent, but it's still kind of in your face sometimes, and it kind of just bugs me a little bit. Nevertheless, I enjoy the games and the region. Here comes the big one. Here's the region that I don't like looking at. Kalos. It looks weird. It just feels wrong. It feels wrong. It shouldn't exist. It just feels like the region was built because, let's say, we want a story. That's like legitimately how it feels to play it. I've recently played through X and Y again, which I kind of regret now because I don't like playing through it. But I played through it. I basically went, I'm fed up, I'm going to play it. I want something to play. Okay, let's go play it again. Let's see if I can... My opinions. This is the 4th time I'm playing it, I think. Yeah, the first time I played it is when I got it. Then I, with Chestnut. Then I did it with Greninja. The reason why I don't like Greninja that much. And then I finally did it with Delphox. And now this time I did it with Chestnut again. So it's 4 times. I really can't feel the region. It's just it feels lifeless almost. The only place that's interesting in any way is Lumiose. It just feels interesting. Everywhere else just feels like we need a town, we need a cave, we need something else. Like, even the artwork doesn't seem to be like jumping to life like the ORAS remakes are, or even like the base artwork for Sun and Moon. It just doesn't feel like, just feels like I just have to draw France, and then the artist fell asleep. I know I'm being very negative towards Kalos, and I really shouldn't be, because it's the first game that I was trying to do things of this. But it has the same problems, but worse than Sinnoh. Just replace a mountain with a city, and then give it a stupid story. That's Kalos. Not to mention the villains are blatantly, terribly hilarious. That's the one redeeming quality. Team Flare's meant to be intimidating. They are just funny about how terribly non-intimidating they are, and I love it. The other thing is, Kalos has undergone what I'm going to call anime syndrome. Well, more specifically, bad anime syndrome. There we go. That's a little better. Where there's way too much. This is an issue with female and not really male, but a little bit of male, female and sort of male sexual push. Now, it's not so much present in characters. It's kind of present within gym leaders, specifically, I think, not Karina, but Valerie. But other than Valerie, I don't think anyone else. Maybe Malva and the Elite Four. Where it's mostly prominent in Team Flare, since all the scientists, which the one part I like is that they're all women, which I find, except for their boss, which I kind of don't really like. I think that should have been a woman too, just make them all women, or maybe make the person in charge a woman, then have like one or two women and then two guys, or like something like that. Something would have been that interesting. It felt like that they were just wearing like nothing, like basically as short of skirts and all that as they could. Even the female grunts didn't feel like they were drawn with like proper aspects in mind. It's just like, no, we need to show off everything. It just didn't feel right to be in this game at all. I don't like bringing it up because it's the one part of XY that I don't like talking about. Nevertheless, let's ditch that topic and move on to the Elite Four. Oh, the gym leaders. Yeah, there we go. Gym leaders. This is a nice assortment of different types, including the new fairy. They're all easy as shit. But that's my number one thing. I was living to say. This game requires you to use the experience share. At some point. I have gone through the game without the experience share, but I couldn't do it once I reached the 7th gym. Simply because I was like 15 levels below standard Pokemon. It was ridiculous how much the gym trainers and gym leaders Pokemon are high leveled in comparison to you. Is ridiculous. You need the experience share, and it just feels like you're being pushed to use it. Now, this problem was fixed in later games, but X and Y still has it. Malva, Cybolt, Wixton, Drasna, and Diantha are fairly interesting. I will blatantly say it. Cybolt, you're probably the worst out of all of them, but other than that, you're actually pretty decent in Elite Four. Nothing too hard, nothing too easy. Exactly what we need for an Elite Four. Diantha, You aren't, Cynthia. But man, you're close. There's been many times I fought Diantha when I was doing my runs, which 4 separate times, where I've actually really struggled. It felt like a tough fight. Now, when Cynthia levels of, oh my lord, I'm going to lose, but it felt like I actually needed to swap, or I needed to do this or that. It just felt like that. Now, I really, other than that, I do kind of like the variants of, like, the people. That's probably my favorite thing. There's a lot of varied people here. You got old men, you got young women, older women who have a life, extremely old women, kind of middle-aged men. You have, like, boys, like young men, boys, other things. You have a nice variety of characters, races, with this, if they weren't all cardboard cutouts. They almost each one doesn't feel like they have a character. The only member of the gym leaders that I think has a character is Karina, but that's because you have her around so much, so you at least talk to her more than once. Usually. And maybe Wolfric too, but mostly Karina. And then Malva, we understand her character because she pops up through the entire game randomly on your holo clips. So you at least understand a little bit who she is. Everyone else, nope. They're cardboard cutouts and can be replaced with literally cardboard. So that's just... I really... don't really care for it. Okay. Now, that's enough of Kalos and me ranting about how terrible it is and all that mess. Let's talk about something a little smaller. Alola, also known as Mini Hawaii. I'll be talking about how there's technically 2 regions of Hawaii in Pokemon now, a little bit later on. How long has this been even going on? Oh my lord. Didn't even realize. Nevertheless, we're going to keep going. I just kind of find it interesting. Now, it's not the best region. It's not the worst region. It's probably the most interesting because it's so small. It's the smallest region out of all of them. Just simply because it's small. Let's see. Yeah, like it's compact. Now, the artwork is nice, the people are varied, and each one feels like they should be there. Now, I should go over the story just like I did with Kalos. I'm going to be blatant about it. The story in Sun and Moon, and Ultra Moon, more specifically Sun and Moon, isn't great. It's better than X and Y by far. And it fits the region far better than X and Y's did. Simply because in X and Y, it feels like they weren't really trying. At least in Sun and Moon, you have the idea of effort, and it feels nice. Now, I'm going to go over the Island Challenge because I was going over the gym leaders, so I have to go up with something pretty similar. With captains, I was kind of sad that some of them didn't change too much, but I was kind of happy that some of them didn't change. For example, with normal type, because there was very little normal types, Gumshoes and Alolan Raticate, really didn't mind too much. With Lana, I did kind of like the swap at the end where you thought you were getting Wishy-Washy, but but you actually got Aquanid. Salazzle swapped to Alola Marowak was probably a good choice, except for the fact that it could call Salazzles. Probably not the best choice. Lurantis, once again, it's not too bad. Feels like an actual challenge, though. And the reason why I'm going over the the totems, rather than the trial captains, is because you actually have to learn about these trial captains, because they lead you on the trial. You actually learn who they are, and it's kind of neat. With Sophocles, got Togedemaru and Vikavolt. And but my opinion about most of the trial captains is the same. That's why I'm not also going over them. I like them and they're interesting. Vikavolt is a bit of a pain. Togedemaru, more of a pain. Mimikyu, I just have a good ghost type or a good poison type and you'll be fine. A steel type works too. I shouldn't go over. I'm not going to go over Komoa because it doesn't have a captain. And then Riombi, well, I didn't even think that it could actually call anything because I killed it too quickly. Like, Riombi was the one that I actually literally killed in like a few seconds. Now, the Kohanas, where you actually legitimately go through them, are very interesting fights. And each of them have their own unique style. They're not full, most of them aren't full characters. Most of them are supporting characters with very little development. Except for Nanu. And a little bit of Hapu. Those two have far more development than Hala or Olivia do. Now, Olivia is also part of the Elite Four, so she gets a little bit more. And Hala, we at least know about him. Nanu, we see him often, especially in the postgame. You see him fairly often. And Hapu, you see her through the entire story, and she's actually, like, available, and you can understand about who she is. The Elite Four, I am glad they replaced Hala with Molayne in Sun Ultra Moon, which gave Steel type rather than fighting. Even though my team was not built for fighting, and I really should have probably had something for Steel, I mean, so I probably should have actually had something else. It just felt more fitting in the group than fighting, because fighting kind of felt like everything but Rock was good against it, so it was like, it's just going to get wrecked. Now, it's just kind of interesting. It's just, Alola is an interesting region. I don't really have too much to say about it. Out of all of them, I will, I'll rank the main core ones. Probably goes Kanto, then Kalos, Kanto, Unova, Johto, Sinnoh, Hoenn, Alola. I personally like Alola just simply because it's different. Though, actually, from a pure standpoint, Sinnoh's probably the best culmination region. Just from a sheer standpoint. Even though the games themselves aren't the best. Now we're moving on to the spin-off games, or side games, depending on the connotation. Ore. Ore is weird. It's a region based on Arizona. Specifically Phoenix. And you can tell, it's very deserty. Yeah, it has a bit of green, but it's mostly desert. And it's weird. I don't really know how to really talk about it because it doesn't feel like a region. It just feels like a region of collection. There's stuff. There's put together. Now it's better than Kanto, but it's not really a region. Now the next one I'm going to talk about is Fiore. Fiore is from the very first Pokemon Ranger game, and this one's much more of a region. Take a look. Well, you can't take a look, but if you go look it up, it actually has a map. Just like all of the other ones I'm going to talk about, as a map. Fiore is probably the most bland out of the 3 Ranger games, but it kind of makes sense. It's the first one. It feels nice. It's basic and straightforward. It's one with nature, I believe is how they kind of put it. It's pretty. It's not too big. There's not too much information on it because it's not really that important. You can beat Pokemon Ranger in about 6 hours with minimal effort. So that's just something. Now, Almia, on the other hand, this one actually has more of a region to it. And I should go over it because I have fair experience with it. Almia is a region that isn't gigantic, but it's big enough that it has towns, places to go, other things like this. Now, and other things like it. It's kind of hinted at that it's in Greece, but we're not really too sure. I'm going to probably agree with that statement because at the end of the game, it shows that the enemy team was looking at Fiore, which Fiore is from Greece. Like, they're literally blatant about it, that it is based on Greece. Specifically the Naples municipality. So, not surprised. Almia is very much islandy. It's kind of similar to Sinnoh, but not quite Sinnoh, and it's different in ways, but it's very interesting. It's really hard to, once again, to talk about Sinnoh, but talk about Almia, excuse me, too much. Except for the name. I like the name. It's my personal thing. I just like the name. And it's Almia in all regions, by the way. So it's Almia region in Japanese. So it's just kind of interesting. It's a personal thing. It's not really too big of a deal. Really, I can't really talk too much about it. It's a region I have a personal connection to. I've played Shadows of Mia way too many times. I have 100%ed it way too many times. I've spent way too much time playing the game. But I just enjoy it. There's something fun about the region, where to go. Oblivia. Oh boy. This is where we get interesting. Because from a technical standpoint, Oblivia is Hawaii. I'm not shitting you. It has 4 main islands that are large enough to support a large amount of people. Or a fair amount of people. One of them gets blown up, but that's not important. So that's kind of interesting. The other one, the thing is, it has a total of 7 islands. And those other 3 islands are uninhabited. Or minimally habited. Or have mountains or volcanoes. Which is very similar to actual Hawaii. And it's kind of interesting. Now, personally, Oblivia is probably the weirdest name because it's Oblivia. It basically means oblivion. And it's kind of terrifying. So, it's interesting. It's maybe based on... It's been hinted at that's based on the Oki Islands of Japan. However, it doesn't... it doesn't quite look like the Oki Islands. It blatantly looks more like Hawaii. simply because it has the look. Hell, the first two islands, Docile Island and Rambo Island, look a lot like the first two islands in Alola. Like, I could possibly put them together and you would go, wait, what? Like, that's how similar they look. And it's kind of weird. I really didn't expect it to look so similar. Now, I don't quite have the same connection as I do with... The other thing is... now, the other reason why I say that is because of the heavier Western influence, or even Hawaiian influence with a lot of the architecture and stuff like that. So I'm going to say Oblivia, from my personal standpoint, is based off Hawaii. You can see a lot of connections between it and Alola. But that's my personal thing. That's just me being personal. Nothing too big. I don't have quite the same connection to Oblivia as I do to Haumea, so I can explain it to a little bit more detail. It's a region that is filled with legendary Pokemon, and is interesting because of that. It has a unique multiplayer function that allows you to do the past of Oblivia, and other things like this. But other than that, it's fairly straightforward. The final thing I want to talk about Oblivia is that each of the islands, if you take the first two, like the first little bit of them, they'll actually spell it solfege. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Because you would re-go. And I'm pretty sure actually I had a few of those off. So I apologize for my terrible pitches. It was just kind of interesting. Now, going over this, I do understand like the idea of everything and the intention to make all these regions. All of them were intended to be good, but it just feels like that some of them have been either lackluster or just less than what they were originally or could do. Now, this actually turned out to be a little bit more negative than I thought it would be, but hopefully we ended on a more happy note with Oblivia, Fiore, and Almia, where they were a little bit more upbeat over that, and you didn't hear me yelling about Kalos quite as much. So thank you all for watching. Listening in this case. I'm used to my other outro. You can check my Twitter for updates. Usually if I'm going to post a podcast, I'll basically say, hey, I'm going to be putting out a podcast at some point over on Twitter. You can subscribe to here, which will obviously give you a notification every time I upload a podcast, which may not be brutally often, but hey, you can ding dong that notification bell. That'll make it even more obvious. And then finally, if you like content here, a lot of it's based on my content over on my main channel, Color Mist. You can go look at that. Color Mist has that channel has uploads fairly regularly, not always regularly, but fairly regularly. So they're updated enough where you can go enjoy it. So hopefully you've all enjoyed watching. I'll see you all here next time. Oh, why do I keep saying watching? See you all here next time when we cover something else. Hopefully something a little less dry. Okay. See you all later. Bye.